Education Committee. Glad you all are here today at 11:30 instead of our usual 1:30 time. I am going to ask indulgence as we sit here and have our lunch. This was the reward for being here on Friday over lunchtime, so if you'll forgive us as we eat, as we conduct our business today. I am going to change the order of the hearings a little bit because I think we have two bills that don't have as many conferees, and then we'll take up the hearing on SB 517 at the end. And so that way it gives flexibility to those others. We will begin, though, with opening the hearing on Senate Bill 496 with an overview from our reviser, Tamara Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and hello, committee. Senate Bill 496 would enact a new section of law requiring that the State Board of Regents, in consultation with the Attorney General, develop materials, programs, and procedures for each post-secondary educational institution to provide annual training on the policies, guidelines, and duties of the institution regarding freedom of speech, association, and exercise of religion on campus. The materials, programs, and procedures would include the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, certain provisions of the Bill of Rights of the State Constitution, and the Kansas Preservation of Religious Freedom Act. As part of the training, the institution would provide the materials, programs, and procedures to certain individuals, including individuals responsible for discipline or instruction. I will note the word "or" is missing between discipline and instruction in line 30 of the bill. Those responsible for the administration of the campus community, and those with oversight over student organizations or those who distribute activity fee funds. The Board of Regents would be required to annually confirm to the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate, and the Attorney General that the training has been provided. Additionally, the bill would authorize the Attorney General to bring an action against the Board of Regents or a post-secondary educational institution to enforce compliance with this section. The bill would take effect on July 1 upon publication in the statute book, and I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Tamara. Questions for the reviser? Senator Sykes.
Thank you. Sorry. Does it specify what action the Attorney General could have or any fines that would be?
So what you're referring to is subsection E on page 2 of the bill, and it simply states that the Attorney General may bring an action against the State Board of Regents or any post-secondary educational institution to enforce compliance with this section. It does not provide any more detail than that.
Okay, and then another question. This is just post-secondary education?
Correct.
Thank you.
Senator Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this training, once it's developed, this bill directs that certain employees of higher education institutions that are under the part of the under the Board of Regents would have to. I was in my office and I forgot. Yeah. But don't you like that song? That they would have to have this training and then just quit making noise. And then, but then it also opens up to anybody else that would want to be participate in the training as well. So does that mean would there? I wasn't sure. Does it then mean that all those trainings would have, or whatever training is provided would have to have public notice at the public institutions?
Yeah, so you're correct that on page 1 of the bill, there in the capital A, B, and C, those are the individuals that are required to receive this training. And then on page 2, in paragraph 2 there, it does state that any other student, faculty, staff, or elected officials, or the staff of those officials would be allowed to attend those trainings. And whether or not this would meet the requirements of an open meeting, I would have to look at the Open Meetings Act to confirm.
Thank you, because I didn't notice anywhere where there had to be public notice. So. Thanks.
Any other questions for the reviser? Seeing none, thank you, Tamara. We will now move to proponent testimony. And we will, due to the number of conferees today, have to limit it to 2 minutes. And we will start with Lance Kinzer, Director of Policy and Government Relations, First Amendment Partnership. Welcome to committee.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'll try to be brief. My employer's fine with me being here, and I have some written testimony on a letterhead. I'm as much here just in my personal capacity as Lance Kinzer from Olathe. In my work, I've had a chance to interact over the last 10 years or so, especially with a lot of faith-based student groups on college campuses. And Kansas has had protections in place for those groups since 2015 that have worked really well. But I can just say anecdotally that it's not uncommon, even in Kansas, from time to time, I'll get a call from someone who knows that I was involved a little bit in some of that, and will say, hey, our student group is looking to get re-registered, and there's some confusion about whether we can have religious standards for those who are going to lead our religious club. And so you point them to the statute, and they kind of work through the process. And generally speaking, those conflicts aren't coming up because there's some sort of animus by administrators at KU, but there's just sometimes a lack of knowledge or understanding of what the law is. And unfortunately, in other states, that has sometimes led to pretty significant litigation that typically the student groups can win. But really the main reason I'm here is those student groups that I've had a chance to work with over the years, the last thing in the world that they want to do is be involved in litigation with the state. They really just want to hold their Bible studies and their community service work and their opportunities for fellowship. And so I based this on a bill that passed in Iowa a few years ago that was a little bit broader than this bill. It actually required the training to be provided to everybody. I think the core really is that decision makers who can affect the religious liberty rights of anybody on campus, but especially religious groups on campus, that they simply have an opportunity to know what is the law in this area, and we think that'll be conflict reducing. I will note, I did in my written testimony, I noted the Scrivener's error on or. I would also note in the section that talks about specific statutes, I think if the committee were to work the bill, adding KSA 655311 through 605313, which is the specific provision on First Amendment protections for campus groups, would be good. I've got more I could say, but I know the time is limited, so I'm going to just stop by saying the purpose of this is not to be punitive against anybody. It's actually to avoid conflict, and we just think if decision makers know what the rules of the game are going in, that the likelihood that there are any kind of snafus with respect to what the current law is are reduced, and particularly the likelihood that the state winds up in court defending in these cases, which has happened elsewhere, is reduced. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody has, but that's kind of the motivation behind the bill and the language.
You are our sole proponent, so if you want to stand and see if there are any questions for the proponent. Senator Sykes.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Lance. This may be a question for Tamara, but since you were talking about statutes and I was pulling up some that were referenced, this is for post-secondary, but would it include, and I know that's our community colleges,
My understanding is the definition would include community colleges.
does it also include private universities?
It does not.
Because when I pull up that statute, private post-secondary institutions are under that definition.
Okay, at least it was my understanding or intent that it wouldn't apply to private. I know that and maybe the revisor can give a better answer than I can on that.
Tamara?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if I'm understanding correctly, in subsection A on page 1 of the bill, there's a reference that says each post-secondary educational institution as defined in KSA 743201B. When I pull up that statute, it says post-secondary educational institution means any public university, municipal university, community college, technical college, and institute of technology.
So follow up, my question is where it goes, I mean, it's listing A through F, and F has that private post-secondary. So even though they're included in that, they are not included in this.
Correct, because the term used in the bill before you is post-secondary educational institution. That is the only definition that would apply.
Thank you. Thanks for that clarification.
Other questions? Senator Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for being here. I do appreciate your saying that there isn't an issue in Kansas, that you have been contacted and that our institutions are doing are doing fine in this arena. So it always causes me, I'm going to just say grief, that we feel the need to be putting it into statute when we don't have any issues. And I think it makes the implication that there are. So that's just my feeling.
I would respond to that by just saying the time to, there have been in a number of states really significant litigation. In my written testimony, I talk about a circumstance at the University of Iowa where a situation around these issues kind of got out of control, and ultimately you had 2 cases going up to the Eighth Circuit. The Eighth Circuit saying that actually the law was so clear in this area that the individual university administrators didn't have qualified immunity and could be held personally liable. There was a $2 million judgment in that case, and then ultimately the state did step in and indemnify those employees. And I'm not saying that's going to happen or would happen in Kansas, but I'm just saying I think a simple expedient like making sure that those who are in positions of authority are just aware of what the rules are helps avoid that without doing anything punitive directed towards the universities. So that's the motivation for it, but I would say the problems in Kansas, there was a significant issue several years back at Washburn Law involving Christian Legal Society, but in recent years, post-2015, most of the issues have been minor, and like I say, I don't think most of those issues have been based on animus. They've just been based on maybe new people coming into administrative roles, not fully understanding the law, and I think this would help with that. So.
Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to follow up on that, that's kind of the interpretation I get of this bill, is to avoid different interpretations of law from different courts, possibly a ruling by the Supreme Court. This just puts this stuff in statute, so there's an easy reference for these post-secondaries. That way, we don't have to have it tied up in court. They can just, is that a fair understanding?
I would note, I know there are probably differences of opinion on this committee, but in SB 2019 that passed on the floor, I think maybe even earlier this week, there is a section in that that deals with training with respect to expression on campus, and this in some ways could almost be viewed as supplemental to that. I think it provides a little bit more detail. It makes sure that that training focuses in on some things that I don't necessarily think are covered by the definition of expression in that bill. So I think the general principle that's at stake here, the Senate at least actually kind of confirmed support for it. I think this does a better job of specifying, so that's the idea.
Follow up, Madam Chair, please, if I could. So basically, you could interpret this as also protecting the post-secondary schools potentially from lawsuits when they can point straight to statute if this is enacted. Is that fair?
Well, I think it's protective of them because clarity in the law, I think, is just inherently conflict reducing. And so, and this is about education and training, and I think that, educational institutions, I think, understand and believe that more knowledge, more understanding about relevant facts is helpful. And these are, and I do want it to be focused on just decision makers who really could impact the rights of students, or especially my concerns, student groups. And so I just think those in positions of authority, knowing what the rules of the game are, means that conflict is less likely. But I do understand an additional training involves some resources, and that's a policy judgment for this committee and others to make.
Any other questions for the proponent? Senator Starnes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your testimony. And I think it's important, like you said, as far as student groups, because I know student groups of that have funds collected for fees to bring in groups and et cetera, et cetera. And gets to a point of what is educational and what's important to those particular groups. And I think the outside pressures sometimes too affect the students in those organizations on how they vote if they choose to allow this group on or off of,
One of the things that this bill does that's distinct from the language that passed the Senate a few days ago is that it specifically indicates that students who are members of student government who are going to have control over funds or other things for student groups would also receive the training. And honestly, in a lot of instances, like in the Iowa case, they had passed a law very similar to the Kansas 2015 law in 2019, and then immediately in the very next fall, there was a pro-life group at the University of Northern Iowa that student government said they couldn't be recognized, and it took about a month for the president of the university to step in and say, actually, both because of the Constitution and because of our state statutes, we have to allow them to be recognized. But it was a big kerfuffle that just never needed to happen, and it was really big. If those students just would have understood, if the student government students would have understood this is what the law is, I think that everything would have been, happened more smoothly in that instance, even though the ultimate result was the right one there.
Seeing no other questions, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. Before we move on, committee, just a couple of quick announcements. I was handed a note that due to our early time start, some of the documents are having a little lag getting uploaded, so be patient. They should be coming, but since we started early, that's the issue there. And I failed to thank John Monroe from Catalyst for our lunch today, so. I don't know where John is, but thank you, John. So next, we will move to neutral testimony from Blake Flanders, President and CEO of the Kansas Board of Regents. Welcome to committee.
Thank you. Chair Erickson. My testimony says good afternoon, but it's because we're used to doing that. So, good morning. You've heard this bill, what it does. I won't read my testimony, but I would envision that we would probably develop training similar maybe to cybersecurity training or those kinds of trainings that people would do as they enter the occupation. We would have to work out, as you certify people annually, when did people start, and we could work those types of things out. I was blessed to get this training in junior high, actually, from a really good instructor, and so I'm hopeful that our people have this training already when they come in from their secondary education experience, but I don't see any issue with really providing that training and developing that and working with the Attorney General's office. I appreciated the proponent saying that this would require additional resource. I always put that paragraph in. It's never been successful, so it's an incredible long shot, but it does require additional resources. And at the Board of Regents, we do have freedom of expression policy, but those are for our governed institutions and not for all the institutions in the system, and so this would be different there, and we would extend this training to the community colleges and the technical colleges and the Washburn Institute of Technology, as noted. With that, I'd stand for any questions.
Are there questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Appreciate your testimony. We do have opponent written only from Timothy Graham, Director of Government Relations and Legislative Affairs from the Kansas NEA, so I will direct the committee's attention to that, and we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 496. We will now open the hearing on House Bill 2374 with an overview from our reviser, Tamara Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Current law provides a psychiatry medical student loan program and OBGYN medical student loan program. Those programs provide loan repayment assistance and a living expenses stipend to students who agree to engage in the practice of medicine and surgery in a service commitment area. House Bill 2374 would amend that by essentially replacing those individual psychiatry and OBGYN medical student loan programs and their corresponding funds with the specialty practice student loan program and fund. And those specialty practices would include OBGYN and psychiatry under their umbrella. So specifically, Section 1 of the bill would establish the specialty practice student loan program. It would be administered by the Chancellor of the University of Kansas, and it would allow the Kansas School of Medicine to enter into medical student loan agreements with students who intend to pursue practice in an approved specialty and commit to engage in the full-time practice of medicine and surgery in a service commitment area. That term is defined in the bill. The Chancellor would determine workforce needs allocate eligible specialties, determine new specialties, and update service commitment area locations based on specific information. An approved specialty is defined as gynecology, general psychiatry, and any specialty approved by the chancellor. Any unawarded specialty agreements may then be used for primary care agreements. Section 6 of the bill would abolish the OBGYN and psychiatry medical student loan repayment funds and instead establish the specialty medical loan repayment fund. The bill also makes technical and conforming amendments to the Medical Student Loan Act, and the bill would take effect on July 1 upon publication in the statute book, and it did pass the House on a vote of 119 to 5, and I will be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you. Are there questions on this bill for the reviser? Senator Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tamara, I know this is in current law, but would you remind me, it's on page 2, starting in line 17, that the service commitment area.
Yes, you're referring to the definition of service commitment area, and it does mean any community within a county in Kansas other than the counties of Douglas, Johnson, Sedgwick, Shawnee, or Wyandotte County.
And so I know that's been there in statute for some time, but now with these specialties, it still remains the same, that even within the specialties, that these communities would not be eligible for someone receiving this to be practicing or getting their continued education in those areas?
Yes, this bill does not make any different determination for a service commitment area for these specialty loan agreements.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Tamara. We will begin with proponent testimony. Again, 2 minutes per conferee. Kelly Witten, Associate Vice Chancellor for State Relations from the University of Kansas. Welcome. And I always appreciate how you are always donning your KU colors in your apparel.
I'm a student
Always.
of Peterson. When Sue was from K-State, she always had purple, so I learned that from her. Thank you so much for letting me be here today. Like you said, my name is Kelly Witten. I'm the Associate Vice Chancellor for State Relations at the University of Kansas. I'm pleased to testify in support of HB 2374, an act creating the Specialty Medical Loan Repayment Fund. The University of Kansas requested this bill to allow more medical specialties to participate in the program, eliminate unintended consequences for our students, and make the program more efficient and to administer. In order for us to understand the need for this bill, we need to understand the program we are requesting to change. In 1978, the Kansas Legislature and the KU School of Medicine came together to develop a program to encourage medical doctors to practice in rural Kansas. What was developed is the Kansas Medical Student Loan Program, or KMSL. KU medical students entering into fields of family practice, pediatrics, internal medicine, and emergency medicine apply to receive a loan repayment and a living stipend in exchange for their medical service in rural Kansas after they complete their medical education. They serve, the service agreement states that for each year a student takes the loan, they will serve at least 1 year in the community. In this statute, rural is defined as every county except for Sedgwick, Wyandotte, Douglas, Shawnee, and Johnson. This program has been amended a few times throughout its history to make it easier to administer and better for the students. Since 2008, 85% of the students who receive the loan repayments complete all their service requirements in rural Kansas. If a student fails to complete their service requirement, they are required to pay back what they received with a 15% interest fee. It is important to note that HB 2374 does not change this original program. This program was so effective that in 2017, the legislature and mental health advocates successfully added psychiatry KMSL program. This is a separate statute and fund that only psychiatry doctors. This fund has been underutilized simply because of the low number of medical students entering that particular field. KU School of Medicine has encouraged participation of psychiatric students, but the program's demand still remains low. In 2023, OBGYN KMSL program was added to the growing list KU administers. With the need of medical specialty doctors like oncology, neurology, general surgeons, cardiology, is growing in rural Kansas, and so HB 2374 is needed now. The changes will allow
Kelly,
more specialties.
I'm sorry, your time has expired.
Okay.
Do you have a concluding remark?
Just concluding is this will this will allow us to do this and to administer this program and limit some unintended consequences that if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer for. So.
Thank you, appreciate it. Next, we have Rochelle Colombo, Executive Director, Kansas Medical Society. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair, or good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm happy to appear today. Rochelle Colombo, Executive Director of the Kansas Medical Society, and I was going to submit as written so that you had more time for other conferees, but since I'm up here, I'll just be very, very brief so that it allows for questions as necessary. Kansas Medical Society strongly supports House Bill 2374, which is an expansion to specialties of the Kansas Medical Student Loan Program. There is a lot of talk in the legislature about access and shortages in rural areas of physicians and how we can better attain and attract physicians in Kansas. This is one of the strongest tools, not only in Kansas, but nationwide. It has an incredible return on the rate of investment, and the number of physicians who choose to practice in rural areas because of this loan program is unmatched really anywhere. And so this takes that program that was established, it expands it out at the authority of the chancellor to allow them to add other specialties as designated as necessary. And then but it still protects primary care. So those other specialties, if they're not utilized, that money will roll up and still go into primary care. So we think that's critically important. It protects the underlying program that was established and has been succeeding since 1974. 78, and it just builds on that success, and does so in, I think, a fiscally responsible way. So we strongly support this. Ms. Witten did a wonderful job explaining some of the specifics of the program, and I'd be happy to answer questions at the appropriate time.
Well, that concludes proponent testimony. What questions do we have for the proponents? Senator Petty.
So, I mean, I think the program that's been in place prior to specialty prior was great. And my only concern is that, okay, we passed legislation designating two different programs, and now we're going to specialty. But yet the specialty is also, as I heard Rochelle mention, is also going to include and I know we're always in need of primary care and family practice, but is that true? It does?
Care is still that program, that original program is self-contained.
Okay, so
only
I misunderstood what she said. It made it sound like that if there wasn't enough people, then it's going to roll over to them.
Only if there were excess funds or excess slots available that would not be taken up by specialty, that money could be used into the primary care. Okay. So, but just to give you there's 120 slots in primary care, and there is 17 in OBGYN and 17 in psych. So the number balance is still, so that is just being able to use funds if they were available.
Yeah, I think it'd be great if it also rolls the other way too, because those specialties are the ones that we lack so much of service in the state as it is. So I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't, okay, it's there, but yeah, we're actually expanding. Not that we don't need primary care doctors. I just don't think that we're expanding that program since we do need these. All right, thanks. Thanks for.
Senator Sykes.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Kelly. So you said that it was being underutilized, and so those, do you know how many students applied? And
I think around each year we have on average about 3 students enter into a residency psych program. That would be yearly. So
okay, thank you.
So I do know that fund has built up over time because of the lack of usage. So
yeah, I think this is great, and I think getting more doctors in rural parts of the state, and if the money is there, that we could be providing this. So thank you for that.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Committee, we have proponent written only from Beth Aller, board certified family physician, and Dina Hubbard, Chair of the Public Policy Committee, Kansas Chapter, American Academy of Pediatrics. There is no neutral or opponent testimony, so with that, we will close the hearing on House Bill 2374 and open the hearing on SB 517. And normally, we would have a briefing from our reviser, Tamara Lawrence, but we have Dr. Cynthia Lane with us, who has been key and instrumental in this piece of legislation, and so she is going to go over with us the changes in the blueprint for literacy. Dr. Lane.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and to the committee. And Madam Chair, I'd like to thank you and also House Education Chair Estes for your interest in this topic, for working with me over the last many months to ensure that we bring you a bill that is reasonably designed to ensure that all children learn to read. And I'll do my best today, Tamara, but if I get in trouble, I invite you to come help me out, all right? So if you will, I'm going to walk you through the bill in specifics, and then I'd be pleased to answer any questions. So Senate Bill 517 represents an act concerning education related to the Kansas Blueprint for Literacy, expanding reporting requirements in the Every Child Can Read Act, which I'll remind you is a pre-K-12 act passed in 2022. It requires members of the Literacy Advisory Committee to have certain expertise, aligns literacy fluency goals with the State Board of Education's assessment cut scores, requires school districts to employ reading specialists and develop individual student literacy plans for certain high-risk students. It requires the State Board of Education to designate best practices and to include those in a literacy practicum in the requirements for teacher licensure, and it requires the development of a comprehensive literacy plan providing requirements for educator preparation programs. It amends several statutes that you have in place in both Chapter 72 and 74. So let me just reiterate that what Senate Bill 517 is a compilation of learnings from other states who have made tremendous progress in literacy outcomes. Over the last many months, we have been in conversation with states, learning what they're doing and how they're doing it. And from those conversations and in working with the Commissioner of Education and the State Board, Senate Bill 517's conclusion is that we need to better align our systems, align our resources, our expertise, and our methodology to ensure that we all are moving forward towards a common set of goals and outcomes. So if I may, Madam Chair, I'll walk you through the specifics in the statute. So Section 1 of 517 is the Every Child Can Read Act, pulls it into a single act here with the Blueprint for Literacy. On page 2 of the bill, the change that is suggested in the Every Child Can Read Act includes incorporating a state single universal screening tool recommended by the State Board to be used in all of our pre-K through 12 buildings. In addition to that, a change at the bottom of page 2 says that the students who are in pre-K through grade 8 who perform at high risk on the fall screening measure designated by the State Board shall be reported to this body, and that the number of students in kindergarten through grade 3 shall have an individual student literacy plan. The State Department shall also report that the students in kindergarten through grades 3 who have exited that high-risk category based on the individual student literacy plan. In Section 2 of the bill, that is your definition section, and there are some renewed definitions that I'll allow you to look at your leisure. If you have questions, please let me know. Section 3 of the bill speaks directly to the role of the advisory committee. The changes that are in this recommended bill start on page 6. And this is an issue I would encourage the committee to have some robust conversations around. The past bill for the blueprint focused on performance on the state English language arts assessment, saying that 90% of our students need to be performing at level 2, and that 50% of our students in grades 3 through 8 should be performing at levels 3 and higher. This amendment recommended on page 6 suggests that you have consideration for changing the goal based on the newly aligned cut scores and on the definition of proficiency set by the State Board of Education, which is now at a level 3. Moving on now to section 4 of the bill. This is the bill that speaks to the responsibilities of the director. The only thing I would point out to you here is that a language change to clarify that Tier 1 in methodology means structured literacy, and you can see that change at the top of page 8. May I continue, Madam Chair? All right, page 9 in section 5. Section 5 and 6 and 7 are where the robust changes to the previous law reside. So on page 9, starting on line 15, you'll see the recommendation that every elementary school employ by either direct employment or contract a licensed reading specialist for each elementary school in the district. And that reading specialist would work with the district and the educators to ensure the development of those individual student literacy plans in kindergarten through grade 8 who perform at high risk on the fall literacy screener. These plans are to be developed in partnership with families, and the recommendation here in the changed law is that the plan shall include 90 minutes of targeted and tiered intervention for the students with those high-risk needs targeted specifically to their deficits. That instruction should occur in one-on-ones or small group instruction, tutoring, or in summer programs. The big issue here is they have a plan, it's developed with a parent, it's based on what that child needs, and that there is 90 minutes of instruction that is occurring weekly for the student. Moving to section 6, section here revises requirements for literacy practicum. This is for undergraduate students in the first section, number 2, that speaks to the need to ensure that our teaching candidates have a minimum of 45 clock hours of practicum, and that practicum results in them having the expertise to assess and to develop instructional plans and to deliver effective one-on-one and small group instruction. Number 3 in that same section speaks to the practicum for reading specialists. And it currently requires, the language is that clinical for reading specialists focuses on assessments, progress monitoring, lesson planning, and delivery under the supervision of a qualified literacy expert. I will just note here that we've made a recommendation to amend that language slightly, and I can go over that when it's appropriate with the committee. Moving further down, this section requires that educator preparation programs ensure that their programs are based on evidence-based practices and that their undergraduates, it says master, the ability to deliver reading instruction using structured literacy. We have a slight amendment there. We're going to suggest changing the word mastery to competence. It's very difficult for a novice teacher to reach mastery. But the bottom line issue is that the educator prep programs are assuring that their candidates have these skills. Section 6 continues on page 11, and this is where it speaks specifically to the responsibilities of the State Board of Regents and in joint responsibility with the State Board of Education. And if you'll go down the page to line 23, the language strengthens that pre-service preparation programs are based on the science of reading in accordance with State Board of Education accreditation undergraduate standards. This just makes it very clear that that is the expectation, and that expands the list of programs that should be aligned to structured literacy, including reading specialists, special ed, school psychs, education leadership graduate programs, and so forth there. The final thing on that page speaks to the tracking of the training for the science of literacy and structured literacy. It includes in oversight a review of course materials and the rigor of application experiences that aspiring educators are expected to complete as part of their program. And finally, on that page, it speaks to the need for the education preparation programs to provide training and access to the high-quality instructional materials that are frequently used in Kansas. Then on page 12, there is an amendment to encourage that at least every 3 years, the undergraduate literacy materials and programs are reviewed rather than waiting for 7 years as the current accreditation cycle. And that professional learning for our in-service educators continue to be provided at low or no cost, with the expansion of including reading specialists, special education teachers, paraeducation, school psychs, and school administrators in that training. Number 9, and if I may, I would ask that you consider starring number 9, because in the learning from what other states are doing to ensure alignment across their systems and into higher ed, those states have implemented a comprehensive literacy implementation plan. And so the amendment here says that in partnership with this legislative body, that the State Board of Ed and the State Board of Regents will develop a comprehensive literacy implementation plan for pre-K through post-secondary education. And the language further down on that page articulates exactly what should be in that plan. It includes common goals, benchmarks, strategies aligned, and it also includes the requirement to have input from families and stakeholders in the development and implementation of that plan. And then finally, Madam Chair, Section 7. In the current version that you have, there's only minor changes there, but we do have some amendments to strengthen the curriculum mapping process for your consideration. Tamara, how'd I do?
You may have found a calling for a reviser of statute job, Dr. Lane, I think.
Well, I'm always looking for the next chapter.
So committee, are there questions for Dr. Lane on this portion? Senator Starnes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Cindy, for being here and all the great work that you're doing. On the practicum piece, just help me understand that particular portion of that. I know it talks about that's going to be designed, there's going to be one-on-one, small group, whole group instruction under the supervision of supervisors. Is that on job site? How's that all? Yeah, just thank you.
So literacy practicums are occurring at our universities today, and they're required by the state board. What this amendment is intended to do is strengthen what actually happens in that practicum, make sure that the teaching candidates in their practicum and the future reading specialists are working in authentic school settings, with real children. They are applying their learning to assess, develop plans, and getting on-the-spot feedback from qualified mentors and supervisors. So the 45 hours in some places is what is current practice. What the university faculty are working on is they recognize that they need to deepen the rigor of what happens in those practicum and clinical experiences. And so this reinforces what they are already working on and know needs to occur.
Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for everything you've done on this. This is great. And I'm really hoping that so much good comes out of this. My question's on page 5 of the bill, where it talks about members being appointed. And originally, I think we had it to where they were appointed by July of 24th, but I also see that that has changed a bit, and there's a little more specificity as far as the board members and their qualifications. Why was that part of the bill, and do we not have all the board members in place, I guess is my question. Why was that necessary to change that?
Well, the language they're striking the date is simply because that's in rearview mirror date. So we do have an active advisory committee. It's made up of legislative and governor appointees and appointees from various education organizations across the state. And it's made up of individuals who I have appointed as the director. My appointments have attempted to be clearly focused on literacy experts. The idea of the change here is that we are facing very challenging performance outcomes that we have to resolve. So having expertise at the table to ensure that every voice represents a stakeholder group and that that individual has expertise in either literacy instruction, literacy research, or as a family receiving that instruction. So we just want to strengthen who's at the table.
Senator Sykes.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Dr. Lane. So on page 11, that section 3, my question is, what is being done to ensure that those pre-service candidates can apply that structured literacy, and how do they know that they're cooperating and teachers are qualified to provide that support and feedback?
Those are excellent questions. So every teaching candidate now has a supervisor out in the field. What the faculty are working on is a clearly articulated rubric of what is expected from that candidate so that we all have common expectations of what that looks like, and that there will be a framework for exactly the experiences that need to occur. So I'd be glad to share that with you when the faculty have finalized that work, but they recognize it. And when I say faculty, I'm talking about our Literacy 7 who've been working across the 7 publics, and we also have strong partnership with the independents. So it's the 7 literacy faculty plus their colleagues, and they're coming together and having conversations so that we can tighten and improve exactly what the practicums look like.
Senator Rose.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dr. Lane, for being here. Can you give us an update on how we're coming along with our current in-service teachers becoming certified in the program? And while we're doing this legislation, do we need to do anything to encourage teachers who are not currently certified to hurry up and be certified?
Yes, 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 and yes. So the training for our in-service educators is done in a strong partnership with the State Department. You're aware that they're providing letters training, and they've recently invested additional resources to expand opportunities for educators pre-K through 6, including administrators, to complete letters. We are also offering the Foundations course. That Foundations course focuses on application and provides coaching. So as of January, if I recall the number in our progress report, 9,408 educators pre-K through 6 have completed either letters, foundations, or one of the other training models. What's our goal? We need 18,690 roughly elementary educators pre-K through grade 6 to complete. So we're halfway there. We need to try to accelerate that training. Let me also add that what is absent from our training is a focus on our secondary educators. Right now, we don't have a strategic focus on secondary, and we need to, because we have significant numbers of students in the middle school and high school who are not reading proficiently. So the comprehensive plan that I mentioned, the most important thing, in my opinion, in this bill will articulate exactly how we're going to meet the needs of all teachers.
Senator Shane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dr. Lane. I just want to confirm, in the original blueprint, there was, you could either call it an incentive or a disincentive for our higher education institutions to do what was expected of them through the statute. Is that still in this, in the update, and did that appear to work?
You know, I'm not a fan of disincentives, but I understand their purpose. So yes, there was a penalty if the Science of Reading 1 and 2 undergraduate courses were not revised, focused on application. If you recall, Senator Shane, that our institutions had 30 days from the time the bill was in effect to complete updating those courses. I'm pleased to report they did that. All 7 courses now are focused on application. And our literacy faculty are firmly committed to continuing to improve those courses. They meet regularly, when I say regularly, on a monthly basis under the leadership of our Dr. Carlson from Washburn, and they are currently looking at how we're evaluating those courses and how we ensure deeper rigor. So the disincentive was there. It might have motivated speed, but I have to tell you, that's not motivating going forward. What's motivating is a commitment to strong practice to ensure that we're preparing educators at the highest level possible.
I know that there's been some recent reporting on some non-compliance on the K-12 side with provisions of the blueprint. Should disincentive or incentive be similarly evaluated to try to figure out how to drive that compliance?
Let me say that the blueprint right now focuses on higher ed. So there is nothing in the blueprint that requires compliance from K-12. It mentions the state board shall ensure that structured literacy and discredited methodologies are not in place. What I know about educators is you give them the right tools and explain clearly where we're going, why we're going, what the goals are, they step up. And so I would encourage us to focus on that rather than penalties.
Thank you.
Senator Rose.
Thank you, Chair. Are there any improvements that we can make as a state in how we assess student literacy so that we're more accurate and so we really know where students stand in their literacy?
Yes, and I think another conferee is going to speak specifically to that. I don't want to steal her thunder, but one of the things that Kansas is lacking is a universal screening tool that would provide data using the same assessment tool, progress data, that we could use to determine how we're doing. Now, I'm sure the colleagues from KSD will also want to speak to that. We have screening requirements. Districts may use the state recommended tool, but they also may use others. So I welcome my colleague going a little deeper into why a universal tool is beneficial. It also saves money.
Thank you, Dr. Lane, for going over the contents of the changes to the blueprint. I know you also have proponent testimony, so I don't think you incorporated that into your overview of the bill. So would you like to provide proponent testimony?
I would, Madam Chair.
And with that, we will open up proponent testimony, and proponents, we do have 2 minutes each. We're going to run a little late here, but we don't have to be on the floor. So I understand everyone's schedule. If you do need to go for whatever reasons, that's fine, but we will finish out and we will be a little late, but that's okay. So we will open up, Dr. Lane, with your proponent
So
testimony.
I assume that means Cindy has me on the clock, so let me jump in. Thank you. Let me back up now that we've talked about what's in the proposed changes and just reframe the why here. Literacy is the fundamental skill in which all other skills are built. You all are very much aware of that. If an individual struggles to read well, they spend a lifetime developing strategies to compensate for that lack of proficiency. So an individual's reading and writing is not just a school issue, not just an education issue, it's a health outcome issue. And there's been data directly showing that if you read well, you have a better chance of having positive health outcomes and you're being able to do for your family what you might want to do. Another way to look at it is individuals who learn to read well, lots of doors open for us. Individuals who don't learn to read well, those doors are difficult to open and often remain shut. So in my written testimony, I want to draw your attention to the charts on pages 2 and 3, which outline our 2025 performance results on the Kansas English Language Arts Assessment. You are very aware of those results. The story here is that while we've done really important work and educators and faculty and board members are working really hard, we have a lot more that we need to do. So at the bottom of page 3, I think it's page 3, you'll see a map if you're looking at my testimony. And that map has a lot of red and some green and a few yellow dots. That is data from our third graders on the 2025 assessment. And the dots we want to see are yellow and green. You'll notice that the dots that are primarily on that map are red, and they're everywhere. This is not a suburban issue, a rural issue. It is not a small town, large city issue. It's not a public and private issue. The performance that's represented on that map shows that this is a Kansas issue. It's a national issue, but we have significant numbers of children all across the state who are reading below proficiency, which ties to, if you think about Section 3 and the goal, this body, I would encourage you to have conversation about what exactly is our goal. Is it proficiency or is it something other than that? But you have all shown resolve, and our faculty and our educators have shown resolve. You passed the Every Child Can Read Act and the blueprint. But what we've learned over the last many months is while those acts have put very important work in place, we are not aligned well between the education systems, and that Senate Bill 517 provides us a framework using that comprehensive plan and these policies to get more tightly aligned. So I cannot overemphasize the importance of that comprehensive plan and what we've learned from other states. Section 6 on pages 12 and lines 10 through 26, really, again, I would encourage us to really look at that and call out what needs to be in that plan. And it includes what we need to do for educator prep, professional learning, ensuring our teachers have access to high-quality resources, and that we have family support. The last thing I will say, Madam Chair and committee, is that attached to my testimony is a list of additional amendments for your consideration. These are important because these amendments come directly from the field. They come from educators and parents and others who really applaud your willingness to discuss Senate Bill 517 and to move it forward. And these amendments will help us strengthen it even further. And many of your other conferees will speak to those.
Thank you, Dr. Lane. We will take all proponent testimony and then open it up for questions. Thank you. Next, we have Haley Burke, a student ambassador, Decoding Dyslexia in Kansas. Welcome to committee. You have 2 minutes.
Chair Erickson and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide proponent testimony in support of Senate Bill 517. On behalf of 1 in 5 Kansas students like me who spend all of elementary school thinking they were dumb. The system was not designed or funded for our brains. My name is Haley Burke. I am 13 years old. I am proud to be from Kansas. When I was young, school was just not for me. In first grade, nothing made sense, so I used pictures to sort of make sense of what was happening. My most familiar memory was hiding under my desk. I did not understand the words on my homework, and I was trying to raise my hand. I was tired of raising my hand. I started to think I was a ghost. I wondered, why should I bother keeping my hand up if no one can see me? I support Senate Bill 517 because of Section 6.2 implementing 45 literacy practicum hours under the supervision of a literacy expert. If my former teachers had this literacy practicum and the training that this bill requires, they would have seen a student who needs a specialist. My success depended on my mom's ability to help me understand reading better than my former teachers. My family invested over $10,000 in training my mom just so she could help me read. Together, my mom and I spent hundreds of hours outside of school to improve my reading. I also support Section 5 of Senate Bill 517, which places a reading specialist in every elementary school. My mom became the specialist I needed because we had to do that work during my summers and after school. Kids like me should not have to spend their summers doing extra school just to understand reading. A specialist is a necessity for kids during the school day, not a luxury. Ensure that our Kansas schools are set up for success in the science of reading to serve students like me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Haley. And is your mom here? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. And we might have some questions for you in a little bit. Next, we have Dawn Burke, leader, Decoding Dyslexia Kansas. Welcome to committee.
Thank you very much. And I am a very proud mother at the moment. Chair Erickson and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide proponent testimony in support of this bill. I'm here today as a proud Kansas parent, educator, and specialist who believes in the power of our public schools. I serve public school as an instructional coach, and together Haley and I are committed to supporting all schools, teachers, and students. To further support my daughter during elementary school, I sought out specialized training that my regular teaching license program did not prepare me for. The training was an investment of those thousands of dollars and thousands of hours through an MSLIC facility to become a certified academic language therapist. These therapy sessions that Haley and I did together made all the difference in Haley solidifying her reading concepts that were taught at school but still lost in her brain translation. This is especially vital for where we're from in Dodge City, our resource desert of Western Kansas. We are masters of grow our own campaigns, and with not having access to a university right next door, we have to have dedicated teachers like myself ready to become literacy champions. If we broaden the definition of expert in Section 5 and 6 of this bill, we start giving all of Kansas access to the gold standard of structured literacy. The goal is simple. We want to secure that our children keep their access to childhood after school and in their summers. Currently, I provide academic therapy in the evenings and throughout the summer, in addition to working as an instructional coach. That is time that Haley should have spent being a kid, playing, resting, and being with family and friends. And if you would allow to add this to the language, to bring my level of expertise into this blueprint bill, we take a step towards childhood remaining just that for kids like Haley. We improve our school day towards literacy success for Kansas students as well. Is my time up?
Your time is up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I
appreciate you being here. Next, we have Dr. Suzanne Myers, Governor's appointee, Kansas Board of Regents Literacy Advisory Committee. Is Dr. Myers here? Okay. Dr. Suzanne Porath, I hope I said that. Written, okay. Rachel Rubio, parent. I feel like Bob Barker, come on down. You're the next conferee. Welcome to committee.
That's right, thank you. Chair Erickson, Vice Chair Thomas, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of Senate Bill 517. I'm the one with the thunder, so I'm going to address those universal screening questions from previous that are specific to Section 1.1, which addresses Kansas's early literacy screening policy. The Every Child Can Read Act codified universal screening and parent notification, which was a great start. Senate Bill 517 proposes a single statewide screener that would provide state agencies with an important second data point to inform statewide decision-making. Currently, the Kansas assessment system provides valuable outcome data, but it comes later in a student's academic trajectory. Third grade is too late. In addition, a single screener would also significantly improve training for both in-service teachers and pre-service educators. When teachers across the state are trained on the same assessment tool, professional learning becomes deeper, more consistent, and more effective. Another important benefit of a statewide screener is the potential to create long-term cost savings and accountability. In several other states, risk screening results are connected or tied to at-risk funding, ensuring resources are directed to students who need them the most. Finally, this preserves local control, leaves it where it matters most in instruction and implementation. What a common screener ensures is fairness and consistency in how we identify students who need support. Early literacy screening is only meaningful when the information leads to timely action for students. A single statewide screener, coupled with student literacy plans, provides Kansas with the consistency, efficiency, and accountability needed to ensure that every struggling reader is identified early and supported effectively. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Is Dr. Bev Schottler here? Director of Academic Programs, Kansas Independent College Association. Welcome to committee.
Excuse me, Chairperson Erickson and members of the committee. I'm here on behalf of Kansas Independent Colleges Association in strong support of Senate Bill 517. For KICA, we have 21 nonprofit colleges that play a critical role in Kansas's educator pipeline. 17 offer teacher education programs, producing 18% of the state's new teachers each year, far more than our 12% enrollment. Our institutions are deeply involved in Kansas literacy work. This past year alone, we trained over 250 in-service teachers through the Blueprint Aligned Foundations courses that prepare teachers in structured literacy and science of reading practices. For my background, I am a fifth-generation teacher. I've taught elementary, middle school, and high school, both general education and special education. I am now the KICA Director of Academic Programs, including special education and secondary methods. Part of my expertise or part of my experiences include being part of the Legislative Task Force, which in 2019 established Kansas' first comprehensive framework for improving dyslexia identification, intervention, teacher education, and accountability. And I would just like to say that KICA stands ready to continue partnering with KSDE, KBOR, institutions, and districts to ensure that Kansas students become strong readers.
Thank you. Committee, that concludes our proponent testimony. Are there questions for the proponents? Senator Petty.
Yes, I actually have a question for Rachel. Rachel, thanks for being here. I think in your testimony you mentioned about a assessment tool, and I'm just wondering, we talk about, and particularly pre-kindergarten, is there currently an assessment tool? I mean, I taught pre-K, it's been a while, and that having a good assessment tool was a real challenge. So I'm just wondering how that world has changed.
Yes, thank you for the question. Currently, the State Board of Education has identified 8 different screening tools that local districts can adopt and use. One of the most common ones used is FastBridge in the state, and there are some districts that do utilize that in pre-kindergarten.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you all for being here. And Haley, you did a phenomenal job. Your mother should be very proud. We do have proponent written only from Sarah Bond. Sorry, Senator Gossage.
My apologies. I thought we had one more proponent, so I was waiting to call Haley up. I do have a question for her. First of all, I want you to know that you just told the story of my son and myself. And he used to say, he had 3 older siblings who were in the gifted program. And he said, "Mother, I'm so sorry I have one stupid kid." You're not a stupid kid. He's not a stupid kid. And we homeschooled. I left teaching to help my son. And the classroom teachers all said, "He's got B+ in class, he's doing fine." I said, "I'd have a feeling when the test scores come in, he'll be doing well to get over 2%. He got 2%. The second percentile in reading, because he couldn't read at all. He didn't understand the letters A and D, and they were both in his name, Adam. Very severe case. And the reading teacher said, "Do you want to be the one to tell him, or shall I tell him that he'll never learn how to read?" I, like your mother, said, "Nobody's ever going to tell my son that." And so we worked together, starting in 4th grade. This is what a B sounds like. And I realized in all my years of being an elementary reading teacher, there were some things that we could have done so much better because it was in the years of whole language. So I just want you to know Adam is now 41. He can read anything. He's doing amazing, married and has a wonderful little boy who is not dyslexic at all and was reading at age 3. And you know, your brain is a little bit different than other people's brains, but I want to ask you my question. I bet you're very good in math, are you?
Depends on the subject.
Most people who are dyslexic, their side of the brain that doesn't do well with reading, but you can. You'll get there. It just takes you longer than other people. The math side is pretty extraordinary. I want to tell you how brave you are to speak today and how it touched my heart. Thank you.
Yeah, I was quite scared to talk today.
You did great.
I do believe we have one more proponent. I'm so sorry, Dr. Carlson.
My name is Carolyn Carlson. I'm a professor of literacy education at Washburn University. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Chair Erickson, I want to thank you specifically for bringing this bill back up for discussion. As you know, the Blueprint for Literacy has done tremendous work over the past 18 months. I am proud to have been a member of the Blueprint Committee since day one. I'm proud to have been the first instructor for the Blueprint's graduate level literacy courses. And I'm proud to be walking shoulder to shoulder with some of our state's finest teachers as they work through challenges and also experience successes. I'm also proud of the collaboration of the 7 public institutions. We have formed an alliance that is unheard of in a lot of states. We have a level of respect and trust for one another that allows us to have open conversations about very challenging topics. And while other states may have difficulty getting collaboration just within one institution, we have 7 institutions, plus more, that are fully engaged in collaborative work. And we celebrate each other's success, and we challenge each other to grow. And over the past year, this collaboration has gained national and international attention. And we've been asked to share our experiences with other states and countries because they see institutions in Kansas with a unified voice and a laser-focused goal on student success, and they want to replicate that in their own situations. Section 7 of the bill speaks to ensuring that higher education continues to improve our programs, and we are already fully committed to doing that. In addition to creating coursework and revising coursework, we are creating a formal process for reviewing and strengthening our programs. This framework is based upon institutional reviews seen around the country, but is aligned to the expectations that we have for the state of Kansas. And this framework examines 3 things: course content and delivery, clinical experiences, and faculty expertise. We already do this sort of professional accountability on an ongoing basis, where we examine aspects of each other's programs and offer recommendations for improvements. And our framework will help us to formalize the process so that it is a systematic and ongoing review of our programs. And this will extend beyond just the 7 institutions to any of the institutions that want to engage in this type of collaborative review. And this framework may also be a model for other states who want to engage in this type of ongoing statewide collaborative work. Beyond our collaborative work, the Blueprint has provided the opportunity for institutions to engage in work beyond coursework. For example, and I'll make these quick, at Washburn, we're supporting public librarians in Northeast Kansas so that librarians understand the science of reading and can better support the communities that they serve. The team at Pittsburgh State has deployed a coaching program in 5 schools. Emporia State is developing an app related to literacy. Wichita State is collaborating with a local school district on a summer intervention program. KU is developing an online repository with free resources for families. Fort Hays is creating a mobile unit to reach those rural areas in that part of the state. And K-State is implementing a literacy fellows program. So a lot of good things are happening, and I look forward to continuing my work and expanding the work of the Blueprint. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Dr. Carlson? Senator Gossage.
I promise I won't tear up on this one. You know, some of the concerns that parents like myself and educators are concerned about is we spend millions of dollars on this is going to be the fix, this is going to be the answer. After and during homeschooling, Adam and I became the district manager for Sylvan Learning Centers, and I was there for 10 years, and we did lots of pre-test, post-test. and gave guarantees to parents. It was a pleasure to be able to work with those parents whose children have been struggling and work side by side with the schools to be able to help these kids. But one thing that concerns me is that we have seen the change in the state assessment. And I heard the director say, and we're going to look at a different, I'm just trying to find it in the bill, we're going to look at a different way of evaluating. The only way to evaluate progress is a pre-test, post-test situation. How did they do before we started working on this? How are they progressing now? Do we see a change? As I said, my son's teachers were lovely, and they just said, he's doing great, because he had a big smile. He would scrunch down in his chair when they were asking people to read, and he's just a nice kid. But that doesn't help kids learn. And so I'm wanting to know where in the bill is it telling us that we're going to address, because, you know, it was very clearly defined before, these are our goals. By doing this program, we're going to get kids to here. Has that been stricken from this bill? And if so, what replaces it?
I think, and Dr. Lane may want to step up and answer this, but I think when she speaks about the comprehensive plan, that's where those goals and that's where those measures will be listed, but she can certainly speak to that.
Thank you, Dr. Lane.
Question. It's an excellent question. So 2 places, that the screening requirements and the literacy plans are that pre and post test for K3. So that is that piece. We absolutely agree with you that we need to understand where children are when they enter, what's happening in the intervention, is it working, if not adjust, and then further assessment. That's one piece. What I mentioned about the goals is that the current goals in the blueprint are that 90% of the children will read at level 2. The state board recently set level 3 as proficiency. What we are recommending is that you change our goal so that is level 3 proficient, that we are driving towards 90% of our children or more reading proficiently. We may need to consider what does that do to our timeline, because we were supposed to be there by 2033. So I'm not suggesting that we have that we remove that, and I'm suggesting that we strengthen that, because why would we be investing in a goal that leaves children below proficiency?
So pleased to hear you say that. That's what I thought I understood that you said, but I couldn't find that in the bill. Is there a specific place in the bill?
Section 3, I think, I'll get you the page number. Hang on.
I believe Tamara has that for you, Senator.
It's at the top of page 6.
Top of page 6. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Seeing no other questions, thank you all for being here and being proponents. Again, we do have proponent written there on the agenda. We will move to neutral testimony and begin with Frank Harwood, Deputy Commissioner, KSDE. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of committee. Happy to be here on behalf of KSDE in this case to present neutral testimony. As the Blueprint for Literacy originally was a higher ed bill aimed at changing some practices that were going on at the higher education, and now this brings in K-12, specifically around what was already enacted as the Every Child Can Read Act, which I want to give some ideas of how the bill could remain in harmony with what the state board is already doing. And to that end, I hope on Wednesday you received the comprehensive literacy plan that the state board was presented on Wednesday. I do think that some of the things that are in there go along with this nicely, but there are a few things that we'd like for you to consider. I'm not aware of what amendments Dr. Lane submitted, so I don't know if these are we'll go with or go against some of those. The question came up about a statewide screener. It's important to know, as part of the currently districts are required to do a screener, universal screener, 3 times a year, kindergarten through 8th grade, and then into 9th grade if they don't have risk and they can stop it, follow the 9th grade year. So that's already happening. They report the spring score as part of the Every Child Can Read Act, which 100% of districts complied with this year, and that report was presented to the legislature as required. So on that, looking at districts have invested time and money into their current screeners. If the legislature thinks there needs to be a single statewide screener, that would take quite a bit of time and money to put together. Currently, they report based on whatever that is, based on the risk factors. So that's happening. Again, it's kindergarten. We don't require pre-kindergarten because we don't know that we have enough pre-kindergarten students to have good data on that. Districts certainly can use their screeners on their pre-K students, but they don't report on that. And then instead of a fall score, they report a spring score. But again, they do the test 3 times a year. The next thing I want to bring up are literacy plans. In the comprehensive plan that the state board was presented, literacy plans are a part of that. I think that it would be important that there is some continuity in literacy plans. So having the state board develop the literacy plans that would be used as opposed to every district developing their own would have merit. Again, that would be part of what the state board's plan would be to develop, so that might take some time. The other issue is just that I think that we confuse the matter sometimes. We do want a comprehensive plan. We want pre-K-12 and higher ed working together. The problem in the statute, just for confusion's sake, is that one is in Chapter 72 and one is in Chapter 74. So for consistency's sake, I don't think it changes a lot of the language, but looking at Section 5 being incorporated in Chapter 72, along with the Every Child Can Read Act, makes more sense. To that regard, the only real suggestion we have there is that with the reading, I'm going to get it wrong, with the reading specialist, making sure that districts understand that they should have access to a reading specialist, not that they have to employ a full-time reading specialist. We have some very small districts where that doesn't make a lot of sense, but they could work with a service center to get those services, so have access to a reading specialist. I think it would be important there. The state board is actually looking more at reading coaches, which I think you heard some proponent testimony is. We think the research is that reading coaches help all teachers improve their reading structure. Reading specialists tend to work with individual students and students that have a problem. They both have reasons why they should be there, but reading coaches are one thing. Okay. And then the other thing is Section 6A also with the state board would make more sense in Chapter 72, and that's where the development of the literacy plans could be incorporated.
Thank you, Dr. Harwood. We do have one more neutral testimony. Is Jim Karlsky here? Oh, there you are. I couldn't see you, and I had you listed. Jim Karlsky with the United School Administrators. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm here representing United School Administrators as well as the Kansas Rural Schools. Jesus, 5-1. I don't want to take a great deal of your time. A lot of what I was about to say is what Dr. Harwood just said. And I guess concern exists around, allowing districts flexibility in meeting the requirements that are in this bill. And Dr. Harwood mentioned these, and I'm sure Dr. Lane has some in that list of recommendations she has, but shared regional reading specialist, potential virtual coaching support, or additional professional development with existing staff and literacy. And I'll wrap up and make my testimony fairly quick, is that we are concerned about the funding streams as far as, it costs a great deal of money, and many of a great deal of legislation we've seen this year has to do with potential unfunded mandates. Please don't make this one an unfunded mandate. Now, granted, we've got at-risk money and everything that this could potentially go for, but the funding streams would be great to be identified. I know you guys are pressed for time, and what Dr. Lane has in her list of amendments and what Dr. Harwood suggested is basically what I had in my testimony. So if you have questions, I'll be happy to stand, but other than that, I'll leave you alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for the neutral, Senator Gossage.
Thank you, Dr. Harwood. You were talking about the pre-test, or the test that to be given 3 times a year. And I guess I didn't read that to mean that the board would have to find this test or determine the test. It seems like, to me, I was thinking it meant approved by the board, but you're seeing this to mean,
So as was mentioned, the state board has approved several, I think the number was 8, universal screeners that districts can choose to use. So districts have already been using those and have incorporated those into how they're doing it. Some of them are tied to the curriculum that they use. And so if they were required to change that, that would take time. At some point, if the state board would have to identify a single one, right now they don't have a single one. So yeah, that would take some time to do. And it would, in that case, it would cost districts money. It wouldn't cost the state board much to actually identify one, but changing on the part of the districts would take time and funding.
thank you. May I ask Dr. Lane to come up and address that, Madam Chair? Thank you, Dr. Harwood.
To answer your question, Senator Gossage, but I might also ask Rachel Rubio, if that's okay, since that was her testimony, to come up with some details. So your question?
So my question is, I'm fully aware of screening programs or screening tests that come with curriculum. I'm sure you are as well. So was the intention of this bill to ask the Board of Education to pick one of those screenings, or is this something that could, we are making sure a district has a screening program that could be used?
We recognize that districts right now have screening tools. Many of them are using FastBridge, and others are using a different tool. The recommendation in the bill, and I'll ask Rachel to give some more detail about the rationale, but the states who are making the most progress in literacy across the country, many of them have identified a single screener that's used across all schools so that we have consistent data and reporting, and we can judge whether we're making progress. Rachel, anything you want to add?
Thank you for that question. That is correct, what Dr. Lane just shared. I think someone asked a question previously about how all of that gets reported from every district, the accountability of the screening data, et cetera. So the single screener would kind of create a process where data is at the state level able to be used in that decision-making process to support districts. It's also, right now we have the Kansas assessment system starts at 3rd grade, and there's been a lot of robust conversation about that. But as I mentioned in my testimony, 3rd grade is too late to start asking those kinds of questions. What kind of support do we need to be offering? What do we need to be doing? So this would allow those conversations to happen much sooner and, in my opinion, better support our students.
So my last question, Madam Chair, is might you consider bringing school districts together, maybe just a few districts that are representative, this particular screening tool? There aren't that many that are probably being used currently in our Kansas school district, maybe 2 or 3, and decide on a universal one. That doesn't mean they couldn't give their own screenings in their building, but maybe at least once a year so that we have a universal screening for all of the schools. That's the only way you're going to get apples to apples comparison.
That's exactly right. And it also, like I said in my testimony, helps with the teacher training side of it. We can go much deeper in their understanding of how to use those assessment tools. And then we also, of course, experience student mobility. And so sometimes that happens, and when the screener is the same across districts, it's a little bit easier for family communication and their understanding of what's happening as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, we have 2 more questions, then we're going to move on, or I'm going to have to get someone to bring a supper. Senator Petty.
This is a question for Jim. Jim, I'll ask it while you're coming up. I just wanted you to share with us, because it seems that and I know funding is always the underlying piece in order to be able to move things forward. But particularly with the small school districts that you represent, are they still having their staff being trained in letters?
Some are, yes, they are involved.
So, do some of them have full staffs?
And the small group of rural administrators and I represent are 100 districts. And so there's a mix of both in from what in talking with them. So they're making progress just like the bigger schools, but there's different challenges.
And that would be, I mean, funding would be one, but.
Funding, but getting the people. I mean, like, if you go west of Salina, there's everything has to be almost virtual to be effective. The service centers out there do a great job, but there is that mileage issue. Senator Starnes wasn't that far west, but I think he can identify with what those smaller school districts deal with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I do know that some senators may have a 1 o'clock. If you do, we understand, but Senator Sheen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to call you back up, Mr. Carlos. I'm not quite sure I follow why being west of Salina requires virtual as opposed to in-person assistance, but I did have a question for Dr. Harwood. And we can speak afterward, Mr. Carlos. So in the prior year's reports that were issued to the legislature, it was reported that I think it was about 20% of schools did not submit the necessary information and data for the Every Child Can Read Act summary report for the legislature. You're saying this year it was 100%, is that correct?
So the report that was presented in January had 100% participation by school districts.
Okay.
There was a report made earlier based on not having all of the data collected yet that said they hadn't done that. But before the report was due to the legislature, all of them had reported.
Okay. In statute, they need to have it turned in by June 30th, though, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Do you think some of that's just education and process, or what can be done to be helpful to help make sure school districts are successful at collecting and reporting the necessary information?
I mean, quite frankly, the biggest challenge for school districts and reporting is turnover in staff. And I mean, so we are constantly trying to educate them about the reports that are going on. And so, but when you have somebody that was their job, especially, and this is true in smaller districts more so, when that was their job, and then when we're asking in July to get, or even late June, that's not a time that even the next person is on staff. So that particular report, sometimes if the person that was supposed to do it didn't, then there's nobody there to actually get it done until August. So in that particular report, it is a timing issue as of June 30th, because we don't know that there is a problem until maybe there's nobody there to ask the question of.
For other reports, is that June 30th a common date, or is that unique to this report?
Really, the only ones that happen around that time in the summer are usually the financial reporting, which are people that work year-round versus, in most cases, with some of the other reporting we do, we try to do it during the school year for that. And again, although there were some that were not there at that time, we also knew that we didn't have to turn the report in until January, so we had ample time to make sure that we had the information before the report was due.
I'd be happy to talk to you about if there'd be a sensible tweak on that, on the dating, so.
I mean, in that case, if we don't have to do the report till January, sometimes doing it at the beginning of the year might be better.
Okay, committee, we do have neutral written only from Emily Henley, a middle school reading specialist. We will turn to opponent testimony, and we have Amanda Sharshall and Holly Ingram from Wichita Public Schools, I believe on WebEx.
Hello.
Hello, thank you for waiting so patiently. You have 2 minutes.
All right, so I'm Amanda Sharshall. I work for Wichita Public Schools as the Executive Director of Elementary Curriculum and Instruction. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today. I would like to put it on the record that this is a neutral testimony with concerns, not an opposition. This is important work that you guys are talking about, ensuring that every child in Kansas has the literacy skills that they need and deserve. And as the largest public school system in Kansas, serving over 45,000 students across 50 elementary schools, WPS has been deeply engaged in literacy improvement efforts aligned with the science of reading for a number of years. Our scale means policy changes of this magnitude carry significant operation, workforce, and financial implications. We strongly approve improving early literacy outcomes for Kansas students, and we share your goals. I'd like to specifically talk about sections 1 and 5. Those are where we have the majority of our concerns. So when you think about section 1, SB 517 mandates uniform practices without really accounting for local context, such as our size, and flexibility for districts, which has been addressed through other speakers already. The approach that we're taking in this bill shifts literacy improvement from professional instructional system to a compliance-driven system, which historically has not produced great results for students in Kansas. We also have concerns with staffing mandates that aren't aligned with the workforce reality. Given current shortages in Kansas, particularly in specialized areas or roles like reading specialists, this mandate would require recruiting dozens of additional specialists in a labor market where districts are already struggling to fill positions. We also have concerns about the no accompanying funding with this part of the bill. Without a clear statewide workforce development strategy or funded pipeline for reading specialists, this would shift limited talented between districts rather than increasing overall literacy capacity. The last thing I'll speak to is the expanded reporting and intervention requirements and the significant burden of compliance without guaranteed funding as well. So this dramatically expands annual reporting requirements, including multi-year literacy data, counts of high-risk students, intervention plans, exits from risk status, and repeated reporting to KSDE. And for a district the size of Wichita Public Schools, these requirements would involve tracking and reporting data for thousands of K through 3rd students each year. And managing individual student literacy plans, intervention documentation, parent communication, et cetera, raises workload concerns for our teachers.
Ms. Sharshell, your time has expired. Do you have a concluding remark?
I do. So I would just encourage us, there's many great things in this bill. I would encourage you to make contact with districts and talk to us about how we can get behind all parts of this bill and be aligned in this work.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Next, we have Leah Fleider, Assistant Executive Director of Advocacy, Kansas Association of School Boards. Welcome.
Sorry, I forgot that WebEx interferes. So we met on this when it was still kind of various pieces of paper and scratches. So we have been a part of this since the beginning, and we are proud to support this literacy work. And we have a member of our board of directors at KASB who serves on the statewide advisory committee. So when it comes right down to it, especially in matters of time, Madam Chair, our concern, as has been reflected, is around some of the funding issues. So thank you, and I will stand for questions.
Thank you. Committee, what questions do we have for Ms. Sharshell or Ms. Fleider? Senator Gossett.
Yes, my question is for the first conferee. I'm sorry.
Are you there, Ms. Sharshell?
Amanda.
Okay, we have a question for you.
Yes. Yes. You said that you have the Wichita Public Schools have been using the science of reading specifically for how long?
Probably close to 15 years. I mean, I can think back to even when I was in the classroom that we were highly focused on explicit systematic phonics instruction, progress monitoring, universal screeners. I would say the most recent change for us has been in educator professional learning. So we've put over 1,000 educators through letters. And I know that we have sent over 500 names to KSDE for educators and administrators who've earned their seal of literacy.
Very good. So have you seen over the last, that this would be a great test, if you will, of the program really working. So if you've been doing this for over 15 years, what difference have you seen in test scores for students in reading during that period of time?
I'd focus more on the universal screener test scores at this juncture. early literacy screeners for us, subtests in letter naming fluency, word segmenting, have seen increased improvement across the past 5 years. I've been tracking some trend data as we've implemented more structured training for our teachers and more required training for our teachers. That's where we're seeing it the most. So where we might have been 30% proficient in the spring 5 years ago for kindergarten across our district on letter name, we now are 60%. So that is where we've seen the vast majority of improvement in Wichita.
And where would you say that Wichita Public Schools, as far as the state assessment, where do you know where the schools fall?
Yeah, so the state assessment assesses more than just comprehension. It's a test of reading skills as well. So if our students can't access the text from the state assessment, they tend to struggle and score more in the twos, level 2 and level 1 than level 3 and 4 in the state assessment. And that is pretty historical. The state assessment did change, cut scores changed, mapping changed. So we're really interested to see how our students do this year.
All right, so I guess you would answer the question by saying what percentage of the students, and you may not know this off the top of your head, but you know the goal here is the 90% proficiency at the level 3. Can you tell us where you think your students would fall at this stage?
Not without a confidence interval here. I would say closest thing I can remember is between 13 to 15% of third graders were at a level 3 or 4.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Shane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Fleiter, you had referenced collaboration, coordination, whatnot, with KASB and the efforts here. I'm wondering, could you describe for us what you've done to work with your membership, what the organization has done to work with membership, if it is awareness of the statutory requirements or how to structure and inform school boards and administrators, get them to understand the changes in literacy requirements, all those kinds of things?
Thank you for that question, Senator. And I would say all of the above, actually. So I appreciate the chance to clarify that. We have been publicizing the efforts ever since they began. We have our advocacy staff that tries to work on, hey, this bill passed, here's what that means for you. And then our legal staff also then puts out updates as far as, like policies that a board would have to adopt in order to comply with the law. And so we have a number of ways that we work with our members to make sure that they are working on what we know we all need to be working on. So thank you for the ability to address that.
At your, there's an annual meeting you guys do. Yes. Do you provide like board member training where they can sit in and at least experience kind of like what that training looks like, and they have a look into what the teachers are being trained on or anything like that?
We did have, I'm not sure, we did have Dr. Lane was there, and former Senator Molly Baumgartner was there at our annual convention. Yes, and they had a dedicated spot there where they did quite a bit of interaction with our members. Help me if I'm missing anything, Dr. Lane. So as far as like training for our board members on that, I don't know if that took place. I'm sorry if I'm misunderstanding.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for highlighting that. Yep.
Sure.
Senator Rose.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question for Amanda. Amanda, you indicated in your testimony that 500 teachers in the Wichita School District have their seal of literacy. How many teachers in Wichita do not have their seal of literacy, and what is the difference in student outcome between teachers who have that seal and those who do not?
I would not be able to tell you exactly how many do not. We have about, on average, 150 teachers per grade level here, K through 6. But the requirement also looks at school psychologists. It looks at elementary reading specialists. It looks at interrelated or high incidence, low incidence special education. And I would say the majority of our teachers just got their seal. So looking at the data from teacher versus teacher on who has their seal and who hasn't, we could start doing that this spring. But it is new to us to have that many teachers have their seal to compare those numbers.
Thank you, Chair. Another question for you, Amanda. What can the state legislature do to encourage more teachers to get their seal of literacy?
They opened up a couple alternative pathways more recently outside of letters, which I think our teachers greatly appreciated. Those pathways being other ways they could attain the seal. In fact, many of our teachers who had not attained the seal through letters were sent the flyers for a program at Wichita State here in Wichita, and many of them are using that to get their seal. So I think they just appreciate having more than one method to attain the seal.
Okay, I think that concludes all of our testimony and questions. With that, I will close the hearing on Senate Bill 517. Thank you to everyone for hanging in there in this lengthy education meeting today, committee. Happy Friday. With that, we will be working these bills on Monday. So with that, we are adjourned.